I grew up Episcopal, and I really loved the body of the religion, but not so much its spirit. I loved the liturgy. I loved the way people dressed up, and the priests had all these different clothes that matched all these different things, and their clothes would match the candles, and everything was just so in sync with all the rituals of it. And my brother loved it too. We loved it so much that we endured 3 years of Bible study so that we could become acolytes, because then we could join in the pageantry. We got really cool clothes too. We got an alb with a belt with different colors for the seasons. And then we kind of had this seniority system where you started out with a wooden cross, and then after you got confirmed, you got a sleek, silvery cross. And we wanted to be part of this pageantry, part of the saintly show every Sunday up there with the priest. Now, this saintly desire did not really stop us from being children, of course. My brother and I were always scheduled to perform our acolyte duties on the same Sunday for convenience for my mother. And one Sunday, we both wanted to pour the water. We both did not want to hold the water bowl underneath the priest's hands. We wanted to both pour the water, and we were going to have this argument right then and there in the middle of the service in front of God and everybody. Now, even after we were nicely admonished, we still had few more hijinks. I grew up in a church where the altar was brought out on wheels. And so one day, one Sunday service, after we had lit the candles and put them down and then stood like we were supposed to next to the priest and being part of it, we decided to play a game where we would slowly push the altar back and forth between each other imperceptibly. We thought nobody was knowing this except for the priest, who was reading out of the good book at the time, thought he was having a stroke until he put his hand on the book and it slowly moved this way and then that way. And then he looked at my brother, who was stifling a giggle because we did not know the jig was up. We quickly found out that the jig was up, that we were not supposed to be pushing the altar back and forth. And if you want to know why in St. Martha's at Papillion, Nebraska, they no longer have siblings do the acolyte duties together, we are proud to tell you. But this cultural background was helpful for me when I went to seminary, and I had an Episcopal professor there. His name is Mike Hogue, and he's one of the leading minds on process theology and naturalism and ecology, being part of the profound discussion we have today in religion. He's also Episcopal. And so in our first day of liberal theology class, he said, now if you want to, you could divide all religions up into the Trinity. Now, why he thought a bunch of Unitarian Universalist ministers wanted to divide all religions up into the Trinity, I don't know. But it's kind of a useful categories to think about all religions. There's religions that go closely with God the Father. These religions are very well defined. They have all the answers. And the test of faith is to believe them without question. And this is a good religion for some people who just want all the answers, who don't have time to figure it out. So these kinds of religions can be put under God the Father. Then there are some religions that you can put under God the Son. These kinds of religions have a personification of the divine, usually just one personification of the divine that they can really relate to, that is there with them, that suffers with them, that blesses the poor and the poor in spirit. It's like that song goes, your own personal Jesus, someone who's there, someone who cares when you're all alone sitting by the telephone. Pick up the receiver and I'll make you a believer. And some religions and traditions have followers of the Holy Spirit who can see the sacredness in all things, the worthiness of every person, the thing that endures age after age, the undeterminable thing that's hard to describe, but you know it when you feel it. And Professor Hogue thought this is where Unitarian Universalism belongs, and he offered up the song Spirit of Life as evidence. Now, this was a little bit difficult for Professor Hogue. He didn't really understand how we could, after leaving the grove of Christianity and wanting to plant our own religion based on reason and reverence and rationality, how could we like a song like the Spirit of Life? You know, move in the hand. Whose hand? What are we talking about exactly there? But But perhaps Professor Hoag did not really understand the spirit of Unitarian Universalism. So let's dig into this song just a little bit. This song was written by Carolyn McDade, and she's written all the other songs that we are singing today. And she is also the person that came up with the water ceremony. And she came up with this ceremony because she said there was nothing in Unitarian Universalism at the time that actually honored women. And it has been her call her whole life to transform our religion and religion in general for women. She found this out in 1961 when she was the musician. She was a musician for a Unitarian Universalist church, and she was supposed to come up with the music for the women's service. So she sat down at the piano and thought, okay, what am I going to practice? And realized there was nothing to practice. There was no song that called to women, that affirmed us, that lifted us up, that said we had strength, or the way we do things is worthy and honorable. And so she decided to write a song for her daughters called Come Daughter. And throughout her life, she has been working with women's choral groups ever since, and that's when she wrote Spirit of Life. And Spirit of Life became a poem, like the unofficial anthem of Unitarian Universalism. It was so popular in our congregations that when it came time to put together the hymnal, the hymnal people who were putting it together, I don't know if they have an official name, but they were putting it together, thought that it would be a glaring omission if Spirit of Life was not in our hymnals. And so reluctantly, she allowed it to be put into the song, and it became part of the hymnal that we all know and appreciate today, number 123. What you'll notice about her worldview as a songwriter, if you look at the other songs that she's written, which is Come Sing a Song With Me, we just sang, and We'll Build a Land, which we're going to sing, is that it has a kind of unique worldview in religions. There is no gender mentioned in the songs. There is a reverence for nature, and there is a call for something greater than all of us, a pull that brings us towards something bigger than us all. And this fits in nicely with our tradition. I mean, certainly it fits in with our transcendentalist history. Emerson wrote and believed in something called the oversoul. He wrote that the supreme critic on the errors of the past and the present, and the only prophet of that which must be, is that great nature in which we rest, that unity, that oversoul, within which every man's particular being is contained and made one with all other, that common heart. We live in succession, in division, in parts and particles. Meantime, within man is the soul of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty, to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. Now, this could be a literal entity outside of ourselves, and it could be a way to define ourselves and the feeling we get all the time when we connect to community. I mean, think about the kid that you haven't seen in a while, and you come to church and you realize that they're taller than you now. Or when you're sitting on top of a mountain with somebody and looking over a beautiful vista. Or after a surgery when that steady stream of casseroles and people come to visit with you. And this is what we feel, the Spirit of Life. When we recall the stories of someone who has just died during a Unitarian Universalist memorial service. Now, this is kind of a weird thing to brag about, but I think our memorial services are really good, don't you? I mean, we don't even call them funerals. We call them memorial services or celebrations of life, because on top of having the comforting songs and readings and a brilliant eulogy by the minister, each person is welcome to share a story about the dearly departed. I remember the first one I went to, it blew my mind. It was for Ted Price. He was a wonderful musician that had us all respect music. It was his thing that everybody needed to be sit and quiet before the first song played at all. Oh, I caught you. I told you about that. Anyway, so he was really such a wonderful person. His favorite quote was, "Sitting on both sides of the fence is a good way to get your pants split." And we all loved Ted, and we all shared stories about him until we were both laughing and crying, and we really felt like we had brought the spirit of Ted with us in that room. Maybe the way we mark the death of someone is so positive because we are people of the Spirit. Maybe that's why so many of our congregations have the name All Souls. We believe that everyone deserves a religious home, and we believe that the part of them that lives on in our shared community, the ineffable essence that makes them who they are, that could be their very soul. And maybe this is why it's so hard to explain to our friends and family who aren't Unitarian Universalist exactly what it is or what it believes. I mean, if everybody is free to discover the sacred, then how do you know it when you found it? If each religious congregation and church is allowed to define its covenant and religiosity, then how can we say that the more Christian churches on the East Coast, the more humanist congregations in the Midlands, and the metaphysical New Age societies on the West Coast, how can they all be part of one religion? And it is this, it's the spirit of the people. The life that is the same in a child from a war-torn country and a newborn baby in a new land. The holiness in each and every one of us here, and everyone else too, even people we don't like, or are downright evil. For some of us, the Spirit has a supernatural quality, and for some of us, the Spirit is the best part of our experiences in the community. And for some of us, it's both. We know the Spirit can be expressed in a variety of religious experiences and ways, and this is the Spirit that persists through the ages, which gives us religious stability while insisting that we must progress forward. What gave Carolyn McDade the strength to transform, to participate in the ongoing feminist revolution in Unitarian Universalism. And it's wonderful that the Spirit of Life has become the unofficial UU anthem, but we know that a new song is coming that will define our generation for a new age that everyone will know. And this is the Spirit that we call to in our songs and what we feel in our hearts as we work to make the world a better place. And it's a thing that you can only know when you feel it. As I mentioned earlier, I love the rituals, the body of the Episcopal faith, but not its spirit. No, I love the spirit of this community here, which reflects the wider spirit of Unitarian Universalism, its essence that we worship together and call holy. My beloved people, let us spread forth this spirit into the world, and may we always feel connected to it today and every day.